It's time for Brush Street Beat, presented by our friends at McLaren Healthcare. And today's guest is a friend from Cleveland. We have the radio play-by-play announcer, Tom Hamilton, joining us. Tom, we're really excited to have you on the show. Exciting series coming up between the Indians and the Tigers. So thank you for joining us.
Oh my gosh, Daniella and Art, thanks for having me. And it's the new world. You know, all of us could have retired if our financial people had told us in December, could you please invest in Zoom or any of these other video presentations that we're doing?
Great
But I'm
point.
glad to be with you.
We're happy to have you, Tom. And the first question I'm going to ask you, here in Detroit, the Cleveland Indians are, if not our biggest, one of our biggest rivals right now, and we cannot seem to beat them. 20 straight losses to the Indians. How do you guys feel about the Tigers in Cleveland?
Well, you know what? It's been fun the last couple of years, but you know, Daniela, this is cyclical, and and we've pointed it out on the broadcast a lot. Look, the Tigers are going through a tough period right now. When you rebuild and you take it down basically to the studs, like Al Avila has done, along with the rest of his terrific front office, it's a painful and slow process. But what they're doing is what the Indians did back in the early 90s with Hank Peters, John Hart, Annie O'Dowd. And that is you have a plan and you stick to that plan. And that's what happens too many times in baseball. Everyone's got a 5-year plan and they're 2 years into it and they get impatient. And that's where mistakes are made because they try to, jump the learning curve. Tigers are doing it the right way. You bring those kids up slowly when they're ready. Obviously, I'm sure the city's excited about the 3 kids they brought up. They've got a whole bunch more coming, but you can't bring all 10, 12 kids at one time. And you've got to do it the right way. Know that there are going to be still a lot of growing pains. But, there was a 10-year period there in Detroit where you went to spring training every year with a legitimate chance to play in the World Series. And it's about as good a 10-year era as we have seen in the game of baseball. We've had some here in Cleveland, but Detroit had that. They went to 2 World Series. I still think their team in 2013 was the best team in baseball, but that's the wackiness of October. They got upset by a Boston Red Sox ball club, but they had a great era. But at some point, those bills come due when you have a bunch of guys that either get old or leave via free agency. And yeah, the Indians are having their way right now. You know, the one thing that we haven't had, Daniela and Art, and I think it's hurt the rivalry, we've never had the Indians and Tigers both really good at the same time.
Right.
It would be fun, I think, for the 2 cities to see them both really good at one time. Then you would see I-80 packed between Detroit and Cleveland.
I think that the Cleveland Indians, and maybe because, I'm a Midwestern guy and I think our part of the country is ignored constantly, but the baseball organization, the Cleveland's organization, I think just does not get the credit for, I think they're one of the top organizations in baseball. And I'm kind of wondering, do you feel that way too? I mean, we're seeing an executive group that really, really understands the game and can really build a team.
Well, I agree, Art. I know I'm prejudiced when I say that, but I think the track record speaks for itself. First off, it's amazing the organization and the amount of people that are now leading other organizations that started here in Cleveland. I mean, we all know about Mark Shapiro now in Toronto, but Ben Cherington with Pittsburgh, who built those really good Boston teams that other people were able to take advantage of the last few years. Ben Cherington started here, and he's now in Pittsburgh. And you can go on and on. We don't need to go through that. But I think, in Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff, I don't think there's a better front office duo than those. And that's not to, by any means, besmirch any other franchise. Obviously, the Tigers are in good hands with Al Avila, but what they have done with limited revenue and resources is what's been impressive because they can't afford to make a major mistake in signing somebody to a free agent contract and then just say, well, it didn't work out, let him go. They'll pay the price for that for years to come. And, the Dolan family are about as good a human beings as you will ever meet, but they don't have another business. So I think the Ilitch family has been if not the best, among the best ownership groups in baseball, and the amount of resources they have given the Tigers to work with down through the years. But they also have another pretty successful business. I don't want to say on the side because it's been their business for years in Caesars. And we don't have that here in Cleveland. And so the margin for error is very, very small here in Cleveland. And to walk that tightrope the way they have and to keep producing their own, especially pitching, is what sets them apart, Art.
Tom, let's focus a little bit more specifically on this weekend series between the Tigers and the Indians. I want to ask you a question about the COVID-19 situation in Cleveland. Every team has kind of faced some sort of battle, some sort of hill to get over with COVID-19, and the Indians are in the middle of that right now. What is the situation, and how do you think it's going to affect this weekend series?
Well, it affects it right off the bat, Daniela, and that's a great point because it made headlines, and we all know that Mike Clevenger and Zach Plesac broke protocol. The Indians jumped on it right away. They got them out of Chicago, although Mike Clevenger wasn't truthful and stayed with the ball club. But as soon as the Indians found out about Zach Plesac, they hired a driver and had him driven back to Cleveland. And the end result. There was a team meeting Friday at the hotel in Birmingham before the series with the Tigers, and it didn't go well for Zach and Mike because they had to address their teammates, the coaches, the manager, the front office, give their side of the story. And it was, should we say, not a kumbaya type meeting whatsoever. And afterwards, it was determined by Tito and Chris and Cherney that the best club going forward was a club without those two on it right now. Now, a lot of clubs talk the talk. This is walking the walk. You're talking about two dynamic starting pitchers. The thing that separates the Indians from other teams in the American League is until this happened, they had the deepest and best rotation in baseball. They're still ranked number one in Major League Baseball as far as starting pitching. But this has an impact on a ball club. You don't take 40% of your rotation and send it to the alternate camp and not eventually feel it. And this weekend, the Tigers are going to see somebody pitch on Saturday that may not be with our club right now. It hasn't been announced, but I think you'll see somebody come up from the alternate camp. And so where it goes forward, Art, I really don't know. And I don't know if the Indians know, but they're not going to be back here anytime soon. For sure, they have to stay 10 days. The only way you get out of that camp sooner than 10 days is if there's some kind of an injury. Well, that hasn't been the case. And to your point, because of how adamant some of their teammates were, all of this will be taken into account. Now, again, in the grand scheme of things, there have been a lot of guys that have done a lot of things way, way worse. But I don't, in any relationship, in a marriage, in a family, when there's a trust broken, that takes time for that bridge to be rebuilt. And where this goes forward, I don't know. I just didn't think it was going to be this bad. But again, it just kind of kept taking on a life of its own, and had people stepped up right away and said, I'm an idiot, I made a mistake. I think this thing could have been put behind us sooner than what we're now seeing.
Tom, you mentioned that the Tigers may see a pitcher that none of us have seen pitch in the major leagues on Saturday. The Tigers have two of their own making their MLB debut, or did make their MLB debut this week, in Tarik Skubal and Casey Mize. If all goes as planned, the Indians will probably see Tarik Skubal. I've got to ask you, from your perspective, a lot of people are excited to see Casey Mize, especially here in Detroit, but all over the country. Are you excited to see him pitch?
Well, I am, and I've actually got another reason for it, Daniela, which obviously you wouldn't know why. But so my son, for 3 years, one of our sons, but Nicholas, who played at Kent State and played in the minor leagues as well, then was an area scout for the Kansas City Royals, and his area was Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. Well, guess who was pitching at Auburn at the time that Nick was a scout for the Royals? And I talked to Nick the other night about Casey Mize because I said, I don't know if we're going to see him or not. I hope we do. In Nick's time there, it was one of his favorite players that he's ever dealt with because of the kid, because of the mom and dad, because of the kid's competitiveness. And, Nick saw as many of Casey's games as his mom and dad did that junior year because, the Royals were hoping, because Casey, if you remember, was having some arm issues a little bit his junior year. And there was some hope by the Royals, hey, maybe this kid's going to tumble down to our spot. Well, needless to say, that didn't happen, and Detroit got a really good one. But Nick said he's not been around a kid or a family that he's enjoyed more, respected more. And when you're a scout, that's what you're looking for, the intangibles that separate, the talented players from the kids that have talent and intangibles. And, Detroit's got a future ace, and I'm excited to see him pitch. I really am.
Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's been great chatting with you, and we are really looking forward to this weekend series with the Cleveland Indians. Of course, a big thank you to McLaren Healthcare for presenting Brush Street Beat right here on the Word on Woodward.